Welcome to Stardust Stereo. I'm Parker McPhinney. I'm your host. Today is August 4th, year 2025. In this episode, I'm going to talk on Mars as a trigger to an eclipse. Today, Mars is at 28 degrees Virgo. We have a partial solar eclipse on the 21st of September at 29 degrees and 5 minutes arc of Virgo. So therefore, today Mars is moving into the space of that upcoming solar eclipse in Virgo, and it's triggering it. And what that means is the potential of that eclipse, as shown in your chart and in the eclipse chart itself, will begin to give you clues to how this upcoming eclipse will be used in your chart, or could be used in your chart by you. For example, I've always said the planets don't make things happen, people do. But there are times when we can feel motivated from within in accordance to what's happening from without. So even though the planets don't make things happen, they act like a big spotlight at that mall that's shining up in the sky to let everybody know, oh, the mall has opened, come on down and shop. So what I would suggest, by knowing that a future eclipse, this eclipse happens the third week in September, is being triggered in advance, because sometimes the triggering point can happen after the eclipse, but this time it's happening before the eclipse. So that tells me that this month, August, is going to be even more powerful, or the potential power of that eclipse will be on display in this month, even more so than it will be when the actual eclipse happens. Now, eclipses, of course, are moments where sunglasses are on the sun or the moon, depending if it's a lunar or a solar eclipse, which means you don't have all the information. So how this can play out right now is some events in your life are triggered that request or require your instant decision making. And because Mars is in that last degree of Virgo, the details matter. How you act will have future consequences or future results from actions that you take right now. This is never, in astrology we view it, it's not good nor bad. It's just how you respond to your circumstances. You can respond to a negative environment with a positive attitude and condition the outcome from your positive attitude. And also, by the same token, something super great can happen to you, or an opportunity can open up that just has enormous potential. But if you don't bring proper attitude to the situation, you're not able to squeeze all the juice out of it. So let's talk for just a moment about the energy of Virgo. Virgo, by its nature, wants to be a helper. It wants to improve. The zodiac placement of Virgo is duty, service to others, service to mankind, helping people have the best diet, have good food, have clean water, good air, proper exercise. It deals with the intestines. Virgo rules the intestines. In astrology, every zodiac placement has a rulership that's associated with the body. So Virgo, it's your, what are you feeding your gut? That's an important thing to look at right now. That would be this moment right now, August 4th, would be an excellent time to take a review, and especially because Mercury is retrograde right now, take a review of your dietary needs and habits. And you could see, if you make a commitment now, that by the time the eclipse happens, the third week in September, you're already on board with your new body. Virgo deals with being organized and compartmentalizing. This is an excellent period to set a goal and begin that goal of organizing your life. Organizing, starting with just a closet. Now, eclipses, like I said, they hide things. You don't have all the information. So right now, Mars is the focal energy saying, let's go, let's clean up this mess, let's clean up the dustbin, let's have your teeth be shiny and clean, get our dental in order. You can apply it to the physical body, to the emotional body, and more even important than either of those are the mental body. So another thing that we would look at is, where is Mercury right now? Mercury's in Leo. When Mars is at that 29 degrees, which will be in the early wee hours on the West Coast tomorrow being the 5th of August, Mercury will be at it will be at 6 degrees going retro. When the eclipse happens, Mercury will be at 6 degrees in Libra. Mercury in Libra and Mercury in Leo get on. One's an air sign, one's a fire sign. Now, please understand, I'm exploring two different charts. One chart being the chart of right now, when Mars is triggering an upcoming solar eclipse, and where the Mercury is right now, and where the Mercury will be on the 21st of September. These are two charts that you interlace and work with your birth chart. Astrology is very much like a puzzle, and another analogy would be a spider web, but everything's connected and things overlay. You have to be able to interpret the overlay always with the birth chart when you're doing personal predictions. And astrology is a forecast medium. Some people say, oh, you shouldn't forecast. I actually read this recently. I'm like, forecast is number uno in astrology. Nobody comes to me and says, oh, don't tell me what you see. I just wanted to put that out. No, people want to know possible future scenarios, where the energy's coming and where it's going, and do I need the umbrella or not? The same with the weather. This is Astro weather. You don't listen to the weather report for any other reason except to know how you need to prepare. Astrology does the same thing. It lets you know how you need to prepare. It also has other great tools, like telling you how a characteristic a particular person may have and how you might deal with them. But the primary energy of astrology is information to be able to navigate the life. And of course, navigating life does mean, how do I get along with the person that I don't get along with, but I need to get along with? Then astrology can also, of course, help you to understand that person's nature. So back to the zodiac phenomenon of Mars triggering a future solar eclipse. Now, solar eclipses are primarily known for stirring the pot, and that means the big stuff in life, not the small stuff. Marriage, birth, death, relocation, new job, new career, new love, divorce, big things, life-changing events, and leadership events primarily. So since Mars is activating right now, the solar eclipse coming up, I predict that we are going to see huge changes in Medicaid, Medicare. Well, we know that's on the chopping block in America, but healthcare in general, across the board in the entire world, is going to be going through a huge shift, not just America, the United States. So with this Mars triggering that upcoming solar eclipse, we will possibly begin to see right now the results of cuts being made in the healthcare department. But not just that way. It can also go another way, that suddenly new discoveries are had and made in connection with health issues that were not known before. How we implement them will be further unveiled as the year goes on. We can see people that are in charge of health in each country, the figureheads, could take sudden drastic changes. In the United States, that would be Kennedy, Robert Kennedy. He's the Secretary of Health overseeing that. So we will very likely, within the next week, start to hear announcements of big shifts and changes that he is implementing that have future events and changes with the entire public health in America, how the system works. We would hope that with Mars, these actions, choices, and decisions that are being made right now will help us overhaul our health situation here in this country and around the globe. And of course, I can't mention health without mentioning the famine that's going on in Gaza. This is not going to disappear, this information. It's going to become even more critical. And with Mars at that degree of the upcoming solar eclipse, I see that perhaps some actions and choices are going to be made right now, which might be considered somewhat drastic, that can help turn that around. Drastic choices like withholding money from countries that are withholding food. You withhold the food, we withhold the money. Things like this are what happens with eclipses, the big stuff. Where Virgo is in your birth chart is the house that you should focus on right now. I'd like to mention that my patrons are the ones that are getting this podcast right now. The public will have to wait 2 days. By the time the public gets this podcast, Mars would have entered into Libra. So astrology is a time-based system. And if you want the information when it's timely, you've got to subscribe and support the channel. That said, I also want to add some information that will be valid beyond these next 2 days. Mars and Virgo triggering that eclipse that happens in September can be utilized even beyond these 48 hours for you to set up a plan for a new work program, a new way that you do the ins and outs of your daily life, and making choices that will allow your structure to be more solid and run more smoothly. The other area that the Virgo triggering eclipse chart could indicate is a crisis within our workforce, dealing specifically with areas of nursing, health, agricultural, harvesting. Virgo's all about the harvest season. We may suddenly become aware, or I think we already are aware, that we are going to lose our crops if they're not harvested in time, that's wasted food. The possible good news is that as leaders become aware of the waste happening, there are adjustments and compromises that are found that allow maybe a loosening of the immigration laws, because we're having that crisis in America as well, and the allowing of workers, even though they may not be completely stamped of approval 100%. In other words, finding a quicker way to do the vetting process in order not to lose, our farmers not lose their harvest. This can be a drought formation in the earth sign, a concern of not having enough water. It's interesting to me that we have in the sky right now so many indicators of a heavy fire season, especially in California, but at the same time, we are having floods in other parts of the country and in the world that are doing devastation. So the water that we need is either too little or too much, and both are simultaneously causing issues. And just as a little tidbit, this Mars falls in the United States of America's president's first house. So his first house being his literally physical body and the self, it indicates he needs to be super careful right now about his own health and how much he takes on, because his health is being triggered. And so any underneath issues that have not been addressed could suddenly, very sharply pop up. This particular eclipse will affect Afghanistan, the New York Stock Exchange, Canada, Iran. Also, there is the possible of charity organizations being very much impacted right now because this Mars triggering the upcoming eclipse. And again, I want to mention our military, our civil servants are highlighted right now. The best use of this energy in the next 48 to 72 hours are to take stock of your health, to get enough sleep, to look at your diet, to see where your services are needed. If you're looking for a job, look in the area where there's a lack of potential qualified people. Perhaps the job might not be something that you would have normally thought to even apply for. There could be a sudden drought in some particular field for various reasons. So you want to think outside the box, but look in an area where practicality is very important. It's not a time to be overly imaginative. It's the time to get down to the nuts and bolts of what makes a system work. And in those areas, if they're needing workers to help that ship run smoother, that's the area that I'm indicating that you need to look in, the functioning job force. Looking in areas where service needs are not being met, service-oriented jobs, and even possible jobs that are overseas in other cultures, not just in the country that you were born in. Because we have an immigration issue going on in the United States, there can be openings that are usually filled in this country right now aren't filled because people are having trouble getting visas, and then vice versa. This can be the same truth in other cultures. For example, I know in our tech field in the United States, many Asians come here with expertise if they're having trouble getting their green cards because of our immigration issue, or they've lost their green card because of our immigration issue. That leaves a shortage within our own country of works that would normally be filled by very qualified people from Asian countries. The last time we had an eclipse at 29 degrees Virgo, even though it would be a completely different chart, was in September of 2006. Now, because Mars is, no matter what sign it's in, about aggression, and in the sign of Virgo, it's dealing with civil servants, and we have seen an incredibly horrific increase of violence toward our civil servants, and specifically our elected officials and people who work on city councils. This Mars in Virgo is sending a very clear signal that we need to have protective structures set up so that people who are serving the public are not subject to these outbursts of horrific violence from people who are not balanced. And I will leave you with this thought. Learn to grow your own food. I've said it before and I will say it again. Growing your own food, even out of pots, on the porch, is a great tool to reduce stress, to add to your well-being, and to contribute to your knowledge of how you can be self-sufficient. So reflect on your diet, eat well, learn to grow your own food, clean out areas that need to be cleaned out and let go, things let go so you can organize better. Be practical in your ambitions right now, and pay attention in these next 72 hours of the people that come into your life and opportunities that you hear about, because they are big spotlights, big clues as to how you can best change your life. Look in your personal chart which house Virgo is in and pay special attention to the factors that that house represents. Build your ladder with solid steps. I'd like to thank you for listening. I'm Parker McPhinney. This is Stardust Stereo. I'd like to thank my patrons. You know who you are. If you'd like to become a patron, you can do so at patreon.com/ParkerMcP. And I want to remind you, you are made of stardust. So go shine.